I'm Rochelle Fleming.
And I'm Warren Freeman. We'd like to thank the Voice Foundation for this opportunity to present our study on the pedagogical education of the current voice teacher population.
In the words of Richard Miller, vocal pedagogy is like a smorgasbord from which one can sample foods both rich and simple. Not everything that can be ingested is equally nutritious.
The literature surrounding vocal pedagogy contains myriad philosophies and approaches. Consequently, the population of professional voice teachers is vast, varied, and unregulated. Hundreds of schools, universities, and performing arts academies offer vocal training, and thousands of individual voice teachers are working without an overseeing body, as exists in other educational disciplines.
In addition, the vocal load of many singing genres is demanding and intense, and injuries as a result of vocal misuse can negatively affect a performer physically, emotionally, and financially. As there is no minimum level of competency required to teach voice, it is easy to imagine that a significant number of teachers are relying primarily upon instinct and the exercises they were given as a voice student themselves.
The purpose of this research is to describe the pedagogical backgrounds of current professional singing voice teachers. The study hopes to describe the education and experiences voice teachers report as being the most influential for their current work, as well as to discover common beliefs regarding vocal pedagogy. We also hope to identify gaps in current vocal education practices that could be improved for the teaching population.
This study received IRB approval through Temple University to administer a questionnaire to self-identifying voice teachers and vocal coaches. An anonymous link was distributed via direct email and through postings in popular social media groups and received 361 responses.
The questionnaire asked general demographic information, followed by detailed questions about teaching history and environments. Respondents next reported their educational experience, including formal academic and non-academic training. They were then asked to indicate which of their experiences were the most influential upon their work with singers. The final sections included a series of questions regarding self-efficacy and teaching philosophy.
Responses were gathered by Qualtrics survey software and analyzed with descriptive statistics. Cross-tabulation was then used to identify and compare potential relationships between variables.
On average, our respondents earned 72% of their income from working with singers. When asked how long they had been teaching, the mean response was 23.7 years.
The average number of singers seen each week is 17.6. The most common working environments were in a private or home studio, college or university, or a performing arts organization.
Participants were asked to identify which genres of vocal performance they regularly address in their work: classical performance, musical theater performance, and contemporary commercial performance. This area proportional Venn diagram illustrates the number of teachers who work in multiple genres. While there was substantial convergence among the genres, the area of overlap between classical and musical theater was greater than between musical theater and contemporary, and the overlap between contemporary and classical was the smallest.
In order to more clearly observe potential trends, we asked participants to choose only one primary genre in which they specialize. 48% primarily specialize in classical vocal performance, 39% in musical theater, and 13% in contemporary commercial music styles.
89% of respondents report having completed academic degrees which included vocal performance or pedagogy. Of those with degrees, only 13% had completed a degree specializing in pedagogy. The average number of years since completing a degree was 20.3.
When compared with the primary genre of vocal performance, classical teachers were 47% more likely to have completed a degree than CCM teachers.
Participants were asked which styles of vocal performance were addressed by their academic studies. 82% reported that their degree included classical technique, 28% included musical theater technique, and 13% included contemporary commercial technique.
This reveals a discrepancy between the genre in which they teach and the genre in which they received academic training. 94% of classical teachers received classical training in their academic degrees, while 41% of musical theater teachers and 29% of CCM teachers received academic training in their primary teaching genre.
Here is a list of subjects that respondents report were included in their academic studies, totaled and then broken down by respondents' primary genre. While the vast majority of academic studies included private voice lessons, over a third of total respondents' coursework did not include vocal anatomy or vocal pedagogy, and over 2/3 did not include supervised teaching experience. The discrepancy is even greater for CCM teachers, listed in the column on the right.
There are many voice training programs and certificates available outside of or in addition to an academic degree.
59% of total respondents report having completed a vocal training program or certificate. However, teachers with academic degrees were less likely to have completed an additional program or certificate than teachers without degrees.
When compared with respondents' primary teaching genre, less than half of classical teachers have completed training programs, compared with 64% of musical theater teachers and 81% of CCM teachers.
When participants were asked what personal experiences have influenced their work with singers the most, the top responses were their own private voice teachers, their own experience as a teacher or coach, and their own professional singing experience.
However, there was a divergence among CCM teachers, who were much more likely to include training certificates and programs among their top influences than the other genre.
Participants were then asked to estimate what percentage of their vocal exercises were derived from each of the following sources. Once again, past voice teachers were the most popular source, with the exception of CCM teachers, who were more likely to use exercises they had learned through a training program or certificate. Interestingly, respondents among all genres estimate that they have developed about 25% of their exercises themselves.
Near the end of the questionnaire, participants were shown a series of statements regarding vocal pedagogy and asked to indicate their agreement with each on a 5-point scale.
The statement, "I prefer to use exercises that I have seen or read about others using," was somewhat or strongly agreed upon by 37% of respondents.
I prefer to use voice science to create or modify vocal exercises for my singers. Had 65% somewhat or strong agreement.
There should be a specific set of competencies or skills that someone must demonstrate to be allowed to teach singing, had similar agreement, with 66% somewhat or strongly agreeing.
The next statement, "It is important that a voice teacher has studied vocal anatomy and function," saw the most agreement of all, with 92% somewhat or strongly agreeing.
The following statement, "I teach the same technique no matter what the style or genre is," was unusual in that it had differing levels of agreement across the primary genres of vocal performance. Classical teachers were evenly split, with 41% agreeing and 48% disagreeing, while 63% of musical theater teachers and 72% of CCM teachers somewhat or strongly disagreed.
While nearly 90% of our sample of professional voice teachers have completed an academic degree that included vocal training, they reported that academic degrees had less influence on their work compared to other influences, such as their own private voice teachers and their performing experiences.
Perhaps this is because about a third of our respondents have not received any academic training in vocal anatomy or pedagogy, and less than 15% specialized in pedagogy. Also striking was that a majority of teachers are working in styles which their academic training did not address. The data indicates there may be an opportunity for academic programs to better integrate the kind of training that voice teachers are getting from supplemental sources, especially for those who teach musical theater and contemporary commercial music.
The need is echoed by the respondents, as a majority believe that voice teachers should demonstrate a required set of competencies, and over 90% believe that a voice teacher needs a background including vocal anatomy and function. While the logistics of creating standard competency requirements for voice teachers may be too complicated to implement, academic institutions have an opportunity to fill this gap for both future performers and teachers by requiring comprehensive vocal anatomy and function training for all graduates.
There are dozens of other questions included in the survey that could not be discussed within the limitations of this presentation. In addition, our survey did not have an international reach, and the inclusion of a more diverse teaching population in general would be beneficial for a better understanding of vocal pedagogy training.